Again, a warm welcome to the last session of this two-day event called Bold Buildings, hosted by Smart City Sweden. We're going to talk about the future of wood. My name is Susanne Rudenstam. I'm the Managing Director for Swedish Wood Building Council, representing the wood building industry in Sweden. It's time to reflect and conclude after 2 days of talking about different perspectives of wood construction and sustainable development within our built environment. Fire safety design and the role of digitalization. We have been talking about wood and sustainability, different perspectives of well-being, requirements for good health in our buildings. We have also been talking about how municipalities develop strategies to fulfill requirements for green transition and sustainable development. And we have seen some examples of bold buildings completed recently in Sweden. I invite you all listeners digitally and the audience in Dubai to take part in our discussion and to post your comments and questions in the chat forum. With me here in the studio, I have Karin Löfgren, architect at RIX Architects, Karin Sandberg, senior researcher at the RISE Research Institute of Sweden, Johan Granström, market segment lead smart cities from ABB, and Olov Schultz. You're an architect, but also head of international affairs at Boverket. Most welcome to you all. So first, I would say a special thank you to you, Karin Sandberg. You have not been taking part in the discussions earlier, nor yesterday or today, but instead been listening in. I'm very curious to learn about your reflections of what has been said during these days. But first, I will also start by asking you about what is your relations to development of wood and wood building industry in Sweden?
Yes. As I said, I work at a research institute called RISE, and I've been working with wood buildings development for many years. I started my research for more than 20 years ago. So I have been in this development for a very long time. And today my main competence is maybe in outdoor structures. I have specialized in wooden facades, but I'm also working a lot now with sustainability of timber buildings, and we see how we can reuse and recycle wood in a larger extent in the future. So I am project leader for 2 projects that we are actually looking into these questions. So I have a lot of things that I have done before, and now I'm looking forward to the future also. So that's my background.
When you started off then almost 20 years ago, there were hardly no building above 2 stories in Sweden. And now in your own hometown, Skellefteå, you have recently completed the 20-story building, 84 meters tall, Sara. It's quite a development.
Yes, it is indeed. I would like to say it had changed a lot during this 26 years or something, 27, since it was allowed to build high-rise buildings. So it had changed a lot.
How would you describe the mutual exchange during the years between companies and the research institute like RISE?
First of all, I can explain a little bit what the research institute is. We are like a bridge between the academia and industry and also the society to implement research. So we help to take the research and so it will be implemented and used. So that's our mission. And the cooperation have been mainly in project. So we work together in project to solve problem the industry or the society have. And therefore our research is very based on the need, what is needed to solve the problems.
When it comes to the built environment and smart cities, one must also add the public sector to that picture. So could you also give a description on the collaboration between the academia, the business, and the municipalities? the triple helix model for innovation?
Yeah, it has been very important. This triple helix, when we have the cooperation with industry and also the whole sector to municipalities, have been a structure that started many years ago when we started with these high-rise buildings. The standards, the building codes, the regulations was not adapted for high-rise buildings or timber bridges. So in that way, we started research, we started standardization to make the change. And when we have all done all this research, we have made measurements, calculations, and laboratory tests. They needed to be tested, like a pilot test. And to do so, you need somebody take responsible for this building, and you needed a municipality to have this kind of building permit. And as you heard yesterday, there was 2 municipalities that was early in this. It was Växjö and Skellefteå that volunteered to take care of these pilot buildings where the researcher made all these kind of measurements. And that's why we have a lot of pilot buildings in Skellefteå. We have residential buildings, offices, we have sports arenas, sports centers, house for parking, and so on. So they have started like a small pilot building, and now they are mass producing this kind of buildings. So you have to start somewhere, and then the industry continue to manufacture this kind of buildings. So it has been very important, this triple helix, and nowadays it's a normal way of working in Sweden, where a lot of projects are including this whole chain of actors to be able to fulfill all these requirements.
So it has been important in the past and in the history,
Yeah.
but it also will be a valid model for the ongoing development.
Absolutely, it's going to be mandatory, I think, in the future, or already now, because everything is very complex now. Very complex to solve everything. So you have to cooperate. You need to have all the actors in the whole value chain to be able to upfill the circularity. And so therefore, this kind of cooperation is absolutely necessary now and in the future. It will all increase.
It will increase, and I guess we have heard many of our speakers, also they are panelists, talking about the continuous dialogue as hugely important. Olov, you haven't been taking part until now either. What is your reflections when listening in during these 2 days?
Well, actually, I've been watching and listening with great interest to all these presentations and panel discussions. And to me, I think you have gathered all relevant stakeholders involved in wooden building construction. I mean, you have municipalities, you have research institutes, academia, you have the wooden industry, you have consultants, architects, engineers. So I found you have a very broad picture of how you are successful in wooden constructions.
Great to hear that. Thank you. Before we continue, I should of course also ask you, both Karin and Johan, if you have any reflections that you want to share, starting with you, Karin.
My reflection is that I think that listening into one session before, it's that everybody seems to be quite passionate about this question, and everybody are very positive and filled with a lot of energy. And I think that is characteristic of the wooden business and the area at the moment, that there is a very positive energy that emerges from everybody in it. And that's really, really nice to be working in that kind of surrounding. So.
Yes, and that is obviously also important to take care of and try to pass on.
It's a responsibility also, so it really.
Yes, thanks. And you, Johan?
Well, I have also watched some of the previous sessions, and it's two things that have struck me. First of all, wooden construction isn't really my field of work, but I'm amazed at what you can actually do with wood as a material. That's one thing. The second thing that I was thinking is real about the sustainability as a kind of a term. Is that it need to be built in. It need to be a proactive act, so to speak, rather than reactive. And I think this kind of platform that is gathered for this 2-day session is a good example of how you can do that to really build it in. So that's my two things have been.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that we should shift focus from what has been going on here to the future. And as we have noted, world leaders are gathered in Glasgow for the UN Climate Conference, COP26. And it's already quite clear that we need to speed up the work that we are doing. It's also clear that many of the solution is to be found in the development of the cities all around the globe. And I have a question that we have been touching upon during these days, and that is what comes first? Technology or politics? Which are the more important driver? Is there an answer to that? Or do you have any thoughts? Karin, what do you say?
This is a tricky question. I think the politicians, they have give the direction. But the answer is the industry. They develop, they have innovation, they prove the innovation, they put a lot of effort to test and develop this. So without that force, political decisions, they won't get anywhere without the technology development. Therefore, I think technology beats the politicians.
Technology beats politicians. Johan, what is your opinion?
Well, it is for sure a tricky question. It has multiple dimensions to discuss, but I believe they have different roles as well. Because from what I see, politics has an important role to set the framework, to set the goals, to set the requirements and demands and so on. And the technology will enable that to happen, right? But I also think that technology kind of is in the driver's seat because we are pushing the boundaries of technology much, much faster than the politics. So it's more like in a parallel process with different roles in different phases of the transition, I would say.
Karin, do you have any? Karin Löfgren, I should say. Any thoughts on that?
Well, for me, I just see that, of course, technology comes first because that comes out of a curiosity of people trying to figure out how can we do things better. But when you do research and you have this curiosity and try to make improvements, not all improvements are improvements. So that's a part of the way of research thinking, that you have to see what really works when you apply your technology to society. And there comes the very important discussion with politics and with society. So I think that it would be a disaster if politicians should be first on the track, because it has to be a cooperation when you have solutions that might work, and then you have needs in society, and then you start working together. So I should say technology comes first, but not all technologies should continue, perhaps. So we have to develop. But then this important thing is that to be able to upscale the technology, so it's economically possible to give benefits to the on a broad sense. There we really need the politicians to be able to set out the direction. Otherwise, it's really difficult to scale, to get a scale that makes technology available for everybody.
Yeah, and it's the scale also that make the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of climate. Olov, do you have any
Actually,
thoughts
I
on-
think many wise words. Actually, technology comes first, but politicians may be very quick in their reaction, and they could use advantageous technologies, innovations, for example, in public procurements, in order to lead the development of society in the right way.
True. So also technology has the power of also inspire, and then you apply the rules and political framework on and to decide on how to go on. I think also, I mean, you talked a lot about the innovation model between the academia and the companies and the public sector, and this is a little bit of a variation of the same theme here. But how do you all look upon, I mean, development? We have, I mean, I guess we have agreed on that we need to work jointly. We need to work together. We need to work across silos, but we also need to work jointly, the academia, the companies, and of course politicians. How do you see that we should continue this work jointly? Who has the power of kickstarting the way to the future? Karin.
I think
Is the model, you said that before, the model of triple helix model is still valid?
Yeah, I think, for example, when a municipality starts to plan for a new district or a plot or whatever, they have the opportunity to have many demands or a plan for what they want to do with this. As we heard yesterday, for example, both Växjö and Skellefteå, they had quite early a plan for how to build more with wood. And Gothenburg, they have also a plan to build this fossil-free preschool. So they have in their procurement the opportunity to have demands and ask for new things. And if there are somebody asking for it, the industry will provide it if they get paid for it. So I think it's very important to have this municipalities asking for things to increase the step forward to develop, for example, circularity or more sustainable building systems, etc.
And is the wood industry, are they up to the task?
Yes, they are. They have started to fulfill or thinking of how to do this. We have recently started this research how to build and to be able to reuse in the future, and how to recycle wood, for example. So we're just in the beginning, but they are very eager to learn how to do it, what kind of requirements or do they have to fulfill. So I think they are quite well to start this work.
They're well positioned to be part in the development. One thing that we haven't really been discussing during these days are the topic or the issue of resource efficiency, also when it comes to developing constructions and houses with less material and better use of resources. And Karin Löfgren, you showed us a couple of constructions that you have been developing at IX with very slender and clever way of using the materials. How do you look upon that, the need for using less material and being more efficient with the material we use, or the resources we use, whether it's material or working hours or man hours?
I think that's the clue for the future, to use less, to do more but use less. and that's with to reuse and to renovate, and also to optimize what the material that you use in buildings. And we have been, I mean, that's something that we really have to take in account. And naturally, when you do the LCA calculation to calculate on the carbon dioxide, that comes you get a figure in front of your nose. You cannot escape that figure. That really shows you what you're using when you make the calculation for the building or for the rebuilding. And that really, it's like a waking call, that figure, and it's so simple, so it becomes beautiful almost to take a look and see that, I can use half of this if I do like this instead, and the figure changes directly. It lowers the carbon dioxide imprint on your building. So that's a very clear and democratic way of analyzing your building and the capacity of using the material just what you need for doing the work, sort of.
The construction industry is responsible for the heaviest waste stream, at least within Europe. Some 40% of the material that we use in the construction industry is never actually being used in any building. So will the life cycle analysis or life cycle assessments also be the path or showing the way?
Yeah, because you put in how much waste do you have, how much waste does your own project give into. So you can see that, for example, if you use CLT and you have the cutouts from the window, what are you going to do with that? You have a percentage, and sometimes we had a calculation recently that said that we found out in the facade we have 30% of waste. Just the house is not even built, and just by the design. So that's something you really have to look into to see how do I handle this in the building, and that's very beautiful because you immediately you find out that I can do like this, and then you take the waste and make that a new material within the same building, and that's very easy to do that if you think ahead. We haven't been thinking ahead before. Now we can do that. And so just get the question on the table and solve it.
And do you use the technology to use that too? I'm looking at you, Johan, too.
Yeah, of course. I mean, resource efficiency makes perfect sense from a sustainability point of view. And I think that goes for even any other material or energy as such. So, and I think this is, I mean, this goes back to the question or the topic around how we collaborate as well, because it's a lot about designing rather than taking a reactive kind of approach to reuse resources. For instance, we need to design for that, and then we need those kind of collaborative platforms. And I think an additional thing is finding new value streams related to that, because then I believe also we can find, because it's so easy that sustainability just covers or addresses one of the dimensions, the green one. But in fact, I think it's very important to also address the economical point dimension of sustainability, and this is where the design and kind of designing the new types of revenue stream comes in. And that goes for energy as well. So if we can better use the resources we have in a building, for example, on energy storage or a solar system or anything else, and find new revenue streams, it makes more sense to actually put in that technology into the building.
That's an interesting thought. So by that you also have you say that we are moving towards a more design-driven innovation process.
Yeah, and I believe we should go that way. And that also, going back to how you develop cities, it goes back that we need to find the right requirements the right demands. Maybe we can regulate it in permits or anything, something like that, to kind of create the breed ground for this kind of movement.
But that's interesting. Who is responsible for those, for pronouncing those requirements?
Oh, well, this isn't really my field of expertise, but I would say that it's really, really much up to the politicians to set the right framework from where we're heading. You introduced this session by talking about the COP26 meeting as such, and I mean, we need to have the requirements. Where are we heading? Because that need to be designed into the permit process. How we develop our cities, what kind of technology we need to use, and it all comes down to what are the goals really? In which direction are we going, and so on? Because that's needed to push the technology and all these processes in the right direction, from my point of view.
Olov, from an international point of view, you have a lot of international relations. Do you recognize this kind of discussion?
Definitely. Of course, I enhance also life cycle assessments, etc. But I would like to add something completely different. The best thing would be if we created buildings which were long-lasting and could be used for multiple purposes, because the objective of a building will always change over time. For example, from history, old monasteries could be used as apartments or even as shops. Look into our older cities, how old buildings could be reused for new purposes. If we design buildings with that in mind, we could avoid tearing down walls and recreate and create a lot of recycling and reuse circularity. So long-lasting solutions with a little bit fantasy that they could be used for many purposes would be my addition.
That's an interesting thought. Would timber industry have solutions for that, or?
We are working on that actually in this project from Framtidens Design, the future design of timber buildings. So actually we are working with that question, and we are trying to have a demonstrator for that within 2 years' time. So it's a lot of questions to be answered to fulfill your request, but we are working on it. So hopefully we have already a demonstrator in Kiruna and in Skellefteå. So we are hope for that.
Yes, and we talked about that in the previous discussion also about people's behavior, because we are building the city, the smart cities for our inhabitants, of course. And the buildings may last, but the people and the behaviors and the need for using the buildings changes. How would that be a part of when you, Karin, you are designing a house? Do you also have that in mind already, that perhaps there should be a different use or a flexible use, or is that something that is being discussed in early stages?
If you take a look today of Stockholm area, for example, and you make an analysis of, you take for 1 year and check all the buildings being torn down, and ask yourself, or check out, why are these buildings being torn down? As you said, number one has nothing to do whether the building is flexible or not. It has to do with what is the density, the capacity of the detailed planning of the area, and how, because I would say that 99% of all buildings are torn down because you can make a greater profit if you can build a couple of stories extra, and then you get the chance, and the city want to develop, and they want to develop certain area. I'm not going to mention all the areas in Stockholm that are being developed just for that reason. So that it has absolutely nothing to do with whether the building is flexible or not. The other part of tearing down a building is because it's built in such a way which is unflexible, but this is just a small percentage, but it is there still, that you can have new demands on the technology, on the installations, on how you treat the energy in the building. So if you build a house or a building with a little bit extra volume for the installation, so that you can take out the old installations and put in, or you can change and you can induce new technology without having everything inbuilt in the house, then you can change technology, but you can keep the framing of it. And then you have to start with the city planning. You have to change the way you look upon a city and the city development. That perhaps you should rebuild instead of tear down. Because today in Stockholm, you tear down houses that are no more than 30 years old. We have been making houses on our company that we today are tearing down. Not because we can see how you can use it, how you can rebuild it and add extra on, but the economical possibilities and the way you want to develop the city gives a economic possibility to tear down. So I think that's a way for the politician to change also in the way you plan the city. Perhaps it shouldn't be possible, economically possible, or by the detail planning possible, just to tear down because it's economical possible to get everything to get profit out of it.
But how could you then combine this with the life cycle assessment approach, where you also take the emissions or the climate damage into account?
Well, you don't have any regulations for carbon dioxide.
But in the future?
Yes, I hope that future will come real soon.
What do you say to that, Johan?
Yeah, I agree to that. I do believe it will come, and it have to, because when it's come to how you're optimized for example, the energy usage in a building is mainly today based on pricing, right? So the CO2 footprint is this really, really important thing that you need to control it by, because it has different drivers, but it has to be, once again, it has to be a part of the market mechanisms. I would say that the CO2 footprint is really affecting the price and thereby how we are controlling and optimizing our buildings. That's really, really important. And I think it's also interesting to look over the life cycle, because you have some footprint that is related to the construction process, right? Then you have a life cycle to take care of. So I believe it's to look simultaneous on the static optimization, meaning that what we put into the building, how we construct it, how we design it, but also the dynamics of it, because there we have a big upside when it comes to energy, about utilization and other such things. But in the long run, the CO2 footprint will be affected by those two factors, I would say.
You can also say that city development is just not about the individual buildings, it's also about the cities and the city planning. So if we also go into the other dimensions of sustainability and also taking the social dimensions into account, do you have any opinions on what keeping buildings and develop the existing buildings do for people living there? Karin, perhaps.
That's big.
No,
it's Olov, of
actually,
course.
all people, every human being needs to feel there are roots to history.
Yeah.
So continuity and preservation of the best buildings is always an objective. But then we must create cities that are livable with a lot of various options to different lifestyles, to outdoor activities, to benefit health and well-being. And the buildings, of course, they must be loved by citizens as well. It's not just an mathematic equation to create space. you have the interaction between the individual and the built environment. So architecture is truly important.
The buildings must be loved by citizens. That's an excellent goal.
And good buildings, you can love good buildings. So that's by inducing quality into the architecture and to the neighborhood. That's also a way of sustainability
Yes, I mean that's perhaps the most important. That's meaning really designing buildings that's last a long time.
And more we are urban nomads. I mean, the difference between workspace and home and how you interact with different facilities in city, it changes so quickly, not at least what we could see after this pandemic. This is also connected to the recreation of how we use buildings. For example, all those offices that now perhaps could be converted into new dwellings, homes to citizens. So actually, all these things are so interconnected. So we must keep the holistic view of our cities and also interact with the citizens. We are not creating for people, but with people.
This final discussion is also, I mean, it's about the future of wood and the future of wood construction, perhaps. So my question to you is also, what do you expect from the wood industry? What do you see that the future development from the wood industry? Of course, wood industry is somewhat suppliers or material suppliers, but do you have a wish list, or do you have a recommendation perhaps to the wood industry on where to go, the next step in development to make sure that we are also part of this development? Starting with you, Karin.
A wish list. I think many of them have already started, so they are trying to solve a lot of these tricky questions, and many of them have started with digitalization in the production line. It means they can meet this requirement for traceability, for example, so we can have this value chain much more together in the future, but it's already started. So I think this is a good idea for the future that they have already started. So the technical point of view is one part. Then we have the another part maybe are to solve the how you buy the business models.
The business models.
Yeah, I think that's the lack today is the business models. You need new business models because the one we have now is not really fit to circularity. Some of them do, but we need new actors to fill in the holes that are missing. So, and I think this is a discussion that have started, and we will have this, but we don't really know the roles for all of them yet, but it will come. So I think new business models, the technology will be solved, but it takes some time. And the third one is they have to start to think about the new regulations, how to fulfill new regulation that we don't know about yet, but they will come. So three things.
And Karin Löfgren.
Well, I see very interesting development about how the wood industry is merged together with the industrialization, and how you today still mainly builds on site. And that I wish I can see I wish to see a quicker development in how to merge those two totally different business models together. For example, if you make a house parts on a factory, and then it puts the installations into the walls and all these fixtures. But you perhaps the best model would be just to put half in the industrialized part, and then the other half on site, because you would like to have the benefits of both types of production. Today, that's very difficult because the regulation puts a difficulty who will take the responsibility for the end result when half of it is made on a factory and half is made on site. And if that could be a closer collaboration, so that we take the positive part of the industrial part of it together with the on-site, then we can get really, really good houses, I think.
So a development towards a higher level of prefabrication.
Higher prefabrication,
but
in combination with the parts.
Okay.
On it's not either or. I would like to see those two productions technologies or ideas be merged together so that we could get the best of both.
So that's also about developing the legal aspects of
legal
it
aspect
in terms of responsibility.
Also, and juridically also, because it's a question of the responsibility.
And also perhaps business models.
Yes, indeed.
That's interesting. I mean, prefabrication is also important when it comes to building in the already built environment where we need to have less.
I think it's there's tendencies to talk about a shift. I would like to have a merge of both, the best of both sides, and then I think it would be best for circularity and to reuse also.
Yeah, the process is changing now, and we don't see the whole process for the moment. But I think it's like you say, it will merge together.
It's kind of a new business logic coming into place. Johan, you have a somewhat outside perspective. You're not part of the wood industry, or haven't been working with the wood industry that much, but how do you look upon?
Well, I see, the future it's about the unknown, and it's a lot about challenging what we know today. So I agree that we shouldn't just shift, we should merge. But I think it's a lot about connecting and inviting the complete value chain related to this. And I think the project with Sara Culture Center in Skellefteå is a good example of that, because it is challenging the legal and the regulations models. It's challenging how we do business together. It is challenging the way we construct and design things. And I think this is really it. It's about exploring the unknown together. That's the main driver, and what I think the wood industry need to really look into.
So finding these projects where we also you can explore and learn, and we could share knowledge coming from that.
Just like that.
Thank you. And Olov,
I'm mission oriented. All over the world, there are so many wanting a home. We need to build so many new apartments in the dense cities. And there we have an option for wooden constructions at the top of existing buildings, on the flat roofs of all those multi-story buildings built in the 1960s and 70s. We could add lightweight pavilions with a modern standard, constructed in a dense city area, lifted up, and in a very short period of time, create thousands, millions of new homes. The future is already tomorrow, and they want their homes already today.
That's a bold idea, indeed. So your opinion is that we will see wooden construction as a part of smart cities in the future?
Definitely.
Thank you very much. We are actually approaching the end of these 2 days and this session. But firstly, I turn to Annika in Dubai and asking you whether you have any questions from the audience to this knowledgeable panel here.
So it's not quite clear yet if our audience would like to enter your discussion, but while waiting, I can't resist to turn to my highly appreciated colleague from the National Board of Housing. I know you're looking into this initiative from the European Commission called the New European Bauhaus. Do you think this can be an opportunity for Swedish wood industry? Olov?
Definitely. There will be a call next year within the new European Bauhaus, and I know there are many colleagues now working in order to co-create with cities, with agglomeration of cities, and with regions to put the best ideas forward within the new European Bauhaus. So definitely there, wooden building constructions could play a very interesting role.
So a question for the rest of the panel, and perhaps even Susanne, in terms of future export. Where do you begin to spread this knowledge and this way of sustainable buildings?
Where do you begin? Is there anyone who wants to pick up that answer? My very short answer would definitely be Dubai, where you're all standing. Is there anyone of you in the panel that would like to give an answer to that?
I could just say that our office have had a lot of questions, a lot of interest from abroad, from people who are interested in living in wood surroundings in their homes because of the healthy environment possibility to get an alternative to what they have in their specific place where they live in very dense populated urban areas. And we have looked into that by together with the industry to see if there are possibilities for export, like the IKEA way, but for housing instead. So that's an interesting area, I think.
Yes, I mean, I'm obviously working with the construction industry, the wood construction industry, and my opinion is that the industry has been very much focused on building up productional capacity and been very focused on the really high demands in the domestic market, but we're now ready to start looking outside the borders and actually see a lot of interesting markets in Europe and around in the world. So export will be the next big thing, I believe.
And sharing knowledge and give example, I think, is one of the key questions to raise the question and show the possibilities.
Yes, and I just exactly, that's a very good point. And I will also just say that it's not about the material itself. It's also about the knowledge that surrounds the knowledge industry. Architects, structural engineers, the fire safety design, the knowledge about creating sustainable cities, and we can work jointly on that.
So, Susanne, I think that's all from us right now.
So then I have a couple of questions. I take them before I get back to you, Annika. I've gotten some questions in the chat. The first one is really exciting. What will the wooden buildings in 10 years be like? Be bold when you think of those buildings.
May I?
Yeah, sure, shoot. They're up for grabs.
I think that we will use less wood in wooden buildings because we will learn to optimize much better. But I also think that in another 10 years, we will regain the knowledge that we actually have lost during the 100 years, to look upon wood as a material with all the range of specific qualities that wood has. I mean that you have 3 different directions relation to the grain that gives 3 totally different ways of properties in the technical aspects of wood, that makes that you could use the capacity of wood like the capacity in the tree, sort of, and to use that more in the construction to create an architecture that goes with the wood, not just using the wood as a material that is homogeneous. Because that's what you often do in the glue lam and also in the CLT. You try to, you take the trunk and you cut it into pieces, and then you put it together to try to increase the homogeneous qualities. But instead, I think that, I hope that in 10 years we will be able to use wood as wood, sort of more in the architecture way, as an alternative to the other, so that we will get a greater range of different ways of using the material. And we need more knowledge to that, because we've lost that a little bit.
So it's also about regaining.
Regaining, yeah, and that's a very exciting development, I think.
We have, yes, can new technology lower the very demanding maintenance of wood constructions? I guess it's a question to you, Karin, and we should also point out that we have wood on the facades, which is something, and then wood in the structure, perhaps another thing when it comes to maintenance.
Maintenance depends on the environment, what the need. So in the future, if we still are looking ahead, the requirements will be easy to fulfill, and then you ask for things that in your procurement or whatever, so you have the right design and also the right treatment, and then you have also better sustainability. So it will be more awareness how to achieve a better material and a better structure and everything. So I know the knowledge level will rise. So in that way, you will also enhance a better structure. So you ask for something and you get what you ask for.
So it's basically back to the same logic as we talked about before, where the definition of demands makes a design-driven process.
Yeah, exactly.
Also important for that question. What are the greatest limits in tree construction today, in wood construction, and how will the industry overcome them? Are there any limits or barriers still in the wooden industry?
Of course. Cost we have talked about, that actually you can almost build everything in wood, but maybe it's not the most efficient way to use wood, and not maybe the cost effective. Maybe you have to use a lot of material. Maybe if you use it together with other material, you are more efficient, that we have talked about earlier. So that in a way you can build, but you can maybe it's better to make it more efficient, to look into the whole structure and all materials. So you have this combination. I think that's one way to see it.
Is there anything else that you would like to address here?
I think it's obvious. You need to have a very natural relation to all building materials, because each material has its advantages, and you should make a choice where to use which material. I mean, concrete is excellent in many ways, steel as well, and wood as well. What we are doing now, these 2 days, is to highlight that there are so many more situations where you could, with advantage, use wood. And that has been partly forgotten and recently developed in so many clever new solutions and good practice. So this is, you have to have this relaxed relation, and where the conditions, as you said, the environment, where the proper conditions are, there you could use wooden structures much, much more than today. And that is what we are all trying to point out in these 2 days.
Yes. Johan, do you have a final comment on that?
Yeah, but I agree with that that insight, and I think that goes for the energy side of it as well, because different geographical areas will have different prerequisites and different kind of best-in-class choices. So I agree with that we need to have an open mind and look at the specific application and do what's best, most cost efficient and most sustainable from an economical point of view, as well as ecological.
Thank you. So I think it's really time to wrap this up and to conclude that yes, there is a future for wood as long as we work jointly. We develop the collaboration throughout the value chain. We have a continuous dialogue. We try to make decisions as early on as possible, and we continue to develop our knowledge and with the technical solutions, both from the technical point of view and also from production point of view. Thank you very, very much for participating here today in this final discussion. And then I leave it to you, Annika, to summarize. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think that these 2 days has had an immense impact on at least my awareness and knowledge regarding cutting-edge performance within building in wood. And this is a great example of how we can pioneer the possible to spread this knowledge. And I also think that this arrangement is also a great example of how we can use Smart City Sweden platform to highlight progress in the Swedish sustainable development.
Yes. Especially, we will continue discussing on how we can raise the awareness of wood constructions globally. But we don't forget, Smart City Sweden is involved in several different focus areas. Urban planning, which we've been discussing, digitalization, mobility, social sustainability, last but not least, energy, environment, and the climate area. And with our 6 regional offices, we can arrange study visits all over Sweden to visit these examples which we've been discussing today, but also in the other areas. So don't hesitate, reach out, and let's together discuss how we can co-create for a more sustainable future.
So I would like to address a warm and many thanks to all our panelists and to our audience. And thanks for joining us. And that's all from Dubai.